Welcome to the Software Report, a leading information source on software companies and solutions. In this episode, we speak with Chris Sullens, CEO of CentralReach, a software and services platform used across autism and IDD care settings, from ABA practices to multidisciplinary clinics and pre-K through 12 special education programs. The platform supports more than 185,000 professionals globally and continues to expand its capabilities across home, school, and community environments. Chris joined CentralReach with a long history of leading and scaling customer-centric SaaS businesses. Before this role, he spent a decade as president and CEO of WorkWave, where he guided the company's expansion from a single product provider into a multi-product SaaS organization serving field service and last-mile logistics markets. I am your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time. It's a delight to be with you.
Thanks, RJ. It's great to be here.
It seems like it's been more frequent that I talk to entrepreneurs or companies in the autism space. And it's one where there are multiple solutions out there. It is a big market. Tell us how you arrived at, this market in CentralReach.
Yeah, so I actually took over from the founder. So I'll share the founding story first and then briefly, and then how I got here. But so the founder was like the typical vertical software founder. She was a practitioner, board certified behavior analyst. She worked with kids with autism. She built a practice. Lucky for us, she built one of the larger practices at the time, prior to 2012. And so as she was using the tools that were available, while there were a lot of tools, the challenge was they were very disconnected. And that actually is still kind of the case. A lot of point solutions that are billed as best in breed, if you will, but require some level of integration. And so for her, as she scaled her practice, found that that was a challenge. And so the kind of product market fit and the solution that she arrived at was really combining both the practice management side, so all the scheduling and the billing and working through the insurance intake, all that stuff, with the clinical solutions and all the workflow that goes into providing care for the child in one user interface, kind of sitting on top of one data set, which really streamlined kind of things for practices. So all the growth prior to me getting here was really based on product market fit and of just as a better mousetrap, thankfully. And then as I got in, I came in after I sold my prior company, which is a company called WorkWave, and was able to partner with Insight Partners and basically did the traditional scaling work of building the team, setting the process, getting the systems in place, but always doubling down on this kind of benefit that we had around product market fit. And as we kind of get to, which I'm assuming every conversation gets up to AI at some point, the fact that we have all the data in one place under one schema really allows us to apply AI in a different way than our competitors.
Yeah, I would think when you were evaluating the opportunity to lead CentralReach, it was also looking at this market and whether or not there was solutions that could go into that other like health services providers, those solutions they're using, if they're a general, practitioner, could be applied to CentralReach or other autism-focused software solutions. Was there a clear advantage that CentralReach had where you didn't feel like there was a lot of competitive pressure?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like now, today, we talk about autism as being a big market. I think the underwrite for Insight back in 2018 when I joined and they made their investment was, a market of a couple $100 million potential, which we're almost at today. So at that point in time, there weren't a lot of competitors that were specific to autism. And one of the unique aspects of those that are specific to autism, like CentralReach and some of the competitors that provides, I'd say, a competitive moat for a more general kind of practice management solution or, some of the other kind of adjacent solutions to come into the market is that the intensity of services is significant in autism. So typically a child is receiving anywhere from 20 to 40 hours of service each week. so it's a full-time job, and the amount of data that's captured, because you're capturing data in two dimensions, which is also a challenge. You're capturing data and trying to drive skill acquisition. So learning new skills, brushing your teeth, introducing yourself to somebody, while at the same time trying to reduce some of the other behaviors that aren't as helpful, like running away, hitting, that manifest themselves when stress kind of hits the child, if you will. And so the data collection system in particular is like very unique to ABA. And it's really hard to kind of add that complexity when you have a simpler kind of, I capture notes. We do a session maybe once a week or once every other week. And so that is one of the things that differentiates our platform from others and differentiates kind of vertical platforms. And so as I came in, that was one of the things that gave me comfort that this was kind of the right place to come in. And then relative to other vertical software platforms, the fact that we had everything under one roof on one database and had that vertical kind of workflow, was really the winning combination even back then.
And where do you foresee like the majority of growth coming from? Is it with your existing clinics and them somehow gaining more revenue from existing locations and practices? Is it expanding into kind of other geographies? How big is that market? It would seem that you could go through it pretty quickly, possibly.
Yeah, well, there's some unique aspects to this market. Unfortunately, we have a lot of growth opportunities because growth opportunities for us mean that families and individuals are being affected in a bigger way. And so it's a kind of a double-edged sword or bittersweet to some degree. It helps power our business, but at the same time, we know like there are folks that are really in a challenged situation and we want to do what we can to help. So when you think about the growth dynamics, I always start with the end market. So when I joined, a lot of the dynamics that were present at that point are still present today. The biggest one being there's a huge care gap. There's only about half of the therapists in the market today. If you look at the caseloads that they ethically could handle, which most of them are not even handling a maximum caseload today, and the number of individuals who have been diagnosed with ASD that need services. And that's who we sell to, are basically the practitioners. So the end market itself has been growing, and you see some headlines around how prevalence rates continue to increase and those things. So the end market is growing still, call it 8 to 10%, but the practitioner market trying to solve kind of and work with those individuals is growing at almost double that. And so that provides kind of a healthy growth for us in two dimensions. One, there's new practices, new therapists coming in every year. And so it opens up kind of the ability for us to continue to grow new logos, if you will, kind of land new opportunities with organizations. But it also gives us growth as our customers are hiring practitioners. So the expansion opportunities. So there's two dimensions from that perspective. And then as we've introduced AI and we've made kind of acquisitions around some other adjacent technologies and solutions that help our customers kind of get more for their money, if you will, higher ROI, leverage their staff in a better way, that provides another dimension. So we do have a lot of opportunities to expand share of wallet, if you will, with our customers, but we also have opportunities to continue to expand just net new logos coming into the business. And then most recently, we made two acquisitions earlier this year called AI Measures and Spectrum AI, which allow us and put us in kind of a leadership position to help the industry move from a fee-for-service model, which is basically like, if you provide an hour of service, you get paid the hourly rate. And if somebody else does, they get paid the hourly rate. But there's no measure of quality that everybody agrees on. And so really where the industry needs to go, where we want to help facilitate our customers to go, and where the payers would like to go as well, is more to a quality-based, outcome-based kind of reimbursement model. And those two acquisitions really helped us get a foothold in that market, and that's going to be a growth driver going forward.
You mentioned prevalence rate earlier, and I've actually asked this question before on other autism-focused companies. And the answer sometimes has been like the reason why the rate is going up is because there was this stigma before around diagnosing it and having it be out in the open. Do you think that is the case? or it was like it just wasn't diagnosed as much previously? Or is there truly a rise in autism?
I think that's a $1 million question. And, I think it's probably a function of all three. So when we look at the main driver, at least we believe, and as we look at, and we've got a number of folks that are thought leaders in the space as well, who've been in the space for a long time. When you think about the evolution of autism and ASD as a diagnosis, it went from kind of Asperger's, or this child's like a little off maybe, to a spectrum. And then over time, that spectrum has continued to kind of expand to the point of you can have somebody on the spectrum who will be a great CEO someday who has autism, and
Hmm.
you'll have others that have severe motor and speech kind of issues where they're never going to be able to go to college. They're not going to be able to get a job. And so the spectrum itself has broadened, which I think has opened up, the opportunities to identify folks that will be on the spectrum. I think as payers also have mandated that coverage be provided, and as states are increasing funding, more people are coming into the space. And so you get more diagnosis because you just have more people looking for now something that is also kind of broadened. So I think the main driver is the expansion of what's considered autism, and the fact that the funding has increased the number of people kind of throughout the whole value chain that are looking to try to identify this. So I would say it's probably less stigma and more of just kind of resources and focus. That being said, I think there is some underlying thing, and I don't know that we know what it is, that is increasing kind of the prevalence of folks who have autism. And so I think that's something that we all need to try to identify as soon as we can.
I'd like to touch on capital partnerships. So you have Insight, a renowned investor. What value have they brought aside from financial capital? How do you interact with them? And, maybe they have capabilities that help grow the business.
Yeah, so I will talk about Insight. We actually sold the business earlier this year to Roper Technologies, which is the publicly traded company. So I'll talk about kind of the compare contrast of both of those. So Insight, I think when it comes to like sponsors and financial partners, to your point, like certainly everybody's got capital. So I think having capital and having kind of a perspective on how that capital gets deployed and making sure that's aligned is really important, because Insight is a very much a growth equity investor. Like they make their returns on building great businesses that grow. They're not into cutting financial engineering and those things. And I think for a business like ours, obviously, that's a much better partner than what you'd consider traditional private equity. The second thing is like investors like Insight who've done a lot, like they just only look at software. So, one, in terms of scaling software, they've seen like pattern recognition is hugely important. And there's a lot of value that I can get as a CEO or team can get by leveraging their pattern recognition over the years of, hey, here are the kinds of things you need to do in sales and process or marketing, et cetera, hiring. So that's a second. And I think they brought that in spades. And the third is not only did they have software experience, but they also had healthcare technology experience, right? And so I came from outside healthcare. I was in field services before, not a healthcare background. I wasn't kind of touched by autism. So all that was new to me. Having a sponsor who had made multiple investments in healthcare businesses and know kind of the difference or the uniqueness around what you need to do with product, how you need to think about data security, privacy, et cetera, is really valuable. So those would be probably the big three. And then the fourth is for me with somebody like Insight in particular, the network of other CEOs and businesses at similar stages. There's a lot of learning that can go on, even though they're different in terms of the end market, to be able to say, like, here are things that are challenging me. How have you handled that, et cetera, and vice versa. So they were really helpful kind of throughout the entire kind of whole period. As we were looked at partners for the next phase of our growth, we had an opportunity with a number of like the gold standard large cap private equity firms, and there's a lot of great firms, and it's not an easy decision. But when we looked at Roper and the ability to take a healthcare business that's mission driven like ours be able to give it a forever home, never have to worry about transacting again, having their balance sheet, which is helpful, but doing it in the context of a much more independent kind of operating environment. Roper has 100 people at corporate and 20,000 employees. So there's no like marketing people sitting on the bench or product people sitting on the bench. They're really buying really great teams, really great businesses, market leaders, and then they're providing kind of the support to allow them to expand under their purview. And so when I think about the value to our customers, the value to our employees, like it was a pretty easy decision to choose them as our next home because it just meant that we had the stability and the funding and the ability to kind of be there forever, which, some of our competitors may not ultimately have.
Would like to hear a little bit about yourself. Like, where did you grow up? Did you always think you'd become a tech CEO?
Good question. I grew up in Chicago, outside of Chicago, western suburbs. So I always felt like I wanted to do this, like not necessarily a tech CEO, but I wanted to kind of run something, even back, in high school and as I was thinking about going to college. So for whatever reason, like my parents were not entrepreneurs and my dad was a banker and my mom was mostly a homemaker, but she also did hair and things like that. So, I mean, we were just pretty middle class, like, good family. And yeah, for whatever reason, I felt like this was a path I wanted to take. And so as I I went to school for mechanical engineering, knowing that I didn't want to be a mechanical engineer, but that's a really good foundation for kind of learning how to think about things and solve problems. And then, went into the technology industry in fiber optics, which was probably a lucky start and got some opportunities to lead early on and became kind of the plant manager when I was only 3 years out of college, or the operations manager. And so that was really good experience for me, and but felt like I needed a financial background, so I went to get an MBA, got my MBA in finance from University of Chicago, and then I went into kind of an entrepreneurial path from there and kind of learned sales and marketing and tried to touch each of the different aspects, and then frankly got lucky that somebody gave me a shot to be a CEO my last company and had some success and met Insight as part of that, and then Insight brought me here, and so I haven't had a resume for a while, thankfully. But
Was learning leadership intuitive for you?
yeah, I'd say to some degree, but I think, experience is really valuable and having the right people around you. Like, so, the interesting thing, so we built a manufacturing plant. It was for a huge company called Alcatel, which is now part of Lucent and Ericsson. They've all like merged up, but it was a hole in the ground and kind of we built the plant, we transferred the technology, we implemented the technology, and then we kind of ran the factory. And we did it with self-directed work teams. And so I think for me, like the leadership learning in a context of like self-directed work teams where it's not top down, you can't just tell people what to do. Like you have to really think about how do you align everybody's incentives and how do you understand where people's heads are at. Some people worked in the sock mill before they came here. Other people went and got an engineering degree that were, and so you're trying to kind of understand a broad swath of individuals with different backgrounds. Like to me, that was the best leadership training that you could have. So I feel like there's a little bit of like certain people maybe gravitate towards that or are more successful, but you need to be in kind of the right system. And I think if you are and you take the advantage of that, those are things I apply even today. Like, it's still kind of part of me.
Last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who's had a profound influence on you?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and say it was my dad. Again, I could go back to the factory, and there was a number of folks there that, like, from a leadership perspective, like mentored me and helped me be successful. But as I think about it, like, one of the things for us, like you talk about core values, and we kind of talk about the core of the core value, that you don't need written on the wall, but you just kind of operate by as part of your DNA. And one of the ones that we have here, well, two of them, compassion, humility, and doing the right thing. And when I think about where did that get ingrained in me, it was like with my parents and my dad in particular. I feel like he was somebody that just did things for others. He had a successful career, but always like came across as somebody who was just a good person, and those around him and those that worked with him, like that would be the first thing they'd say about him. And so I feel like that just had a pretty profound effect on me and the kind of people that I surround myself with.
Last question. I usually ask about a charity cause or other endeavor, but I think that's wrapped up into Central Reach. So tell us about how you like to spend your time outside of work.
Yeah. I have two little ones, so that usually consumes the vast majority of my time. So I have a daughter who's going to turn 6 on November 20th, and a daughter who's 4, and they are full of energy and really consume the vast majority of my time. And we like to do 5Ks and run, and I was an athlete earlier on, and so I like to try to do that. But really, it's more around family and spending time with them, and I think I'm at an interesting spot in my life where I can devote more time to kind of that and appreciate it in a way that is harder to do when you're younger.
Excellent. Well, Chris, I want to thank you again for taking the time. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation as well.